December 1st, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. A 42-year-old seamstress climbs onto a city bus after a long day of work. She sits in the first row of the colored section. The bus fills up. A white man is left standing. The driver turns around and tells her to move. And Rosa Parks says no. One word. 2 letters. That changed the trajectory of American history. But here's the thing, this wasn't some spontaneous act of rebellion. This wasn't a woman who just snapped one day because her feet hurt. When you look at Rosa Parks' birth chart, you see something incredible, an Aquarius Sun with a Capricorn Moon and Capricorn Rising. This is the chart of someone who was cosmically designed to be an immovable force for justice. Aquarius is a fixed sign. Once they decide something, good luck. You're not moving them. Wait till you hear about her Mars placement, though, because that explains why she didn't just refuse to move. She sat there with perfect calm while they took her to jail. And here's what's wild about the timing. When the Supreme Court finally ruled bus segregation unconstitutional almost exactly a year later, Saturn, her chart ruler, had just stationed direct. The planet of delayed justice literally said, okay now, the cosmic receipts are unreal. If you're obsessed with understanding how the stars shaped the people who shaped history, hit subscribe, drop a like on this video, and I need to know, do you think Rosa Parks was born to be a revolutionary, or did she choose it? Like, was her Aquarius Sun destiny, or did she activate it? Comment below, because this debate is everything. All right, let me tell you about this chart because it explains so much about why Rosa Parks became the mother of the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks was born February 4th, 1913 in Tuskegee, Alabama. Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Capricorn, Capricorn Rising. Now, individually, these placements are powerful. Together, they create someone who is basically a mountain that believes in human rights. Let's break this down. Aquarius is the sign of the humanitarian, the visionary, the person who looks at society and says, this could be better, this should be better, and I'm going to do something about it. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, the planet of revolution, sudden change, disrupting the status quo. But here's what people miss about Aquarius. It's fixed air. The other air signs, Gemini and Libra, will change their minds, not Aquarius. Now add a Capricorn Moon. The moon is your emotional core. It's how you process feelings, what makes you feel safe, how you respond to stress. Capricorn moons are emotionally controlled, dignified. They don't cry in public. They don't have meltdowns. They take their feelings and they channel them into work. Long-term, strategic, patient work. A Capricorn moon can wait decades for the right moment. Delayed gratification isn't a skill for them, it's a lifestyle. And then, Capricorn Rising. This is how the world sees you. Rosa Parks walked into every room projecting quiet authority. People looked at her and saw someone you don't mess with. Not because she was loud, but because she radiated the kind of composure that made you check yourself. Keep that Saturn-ruled chart in mind. Aquarius vision plus Capricorn execution, because you're about to see it define everything she did. Rosa was born in Tuskegee but grew up in Pine Level, Alabama, raised by her mother and grandparents after her father James left when she was about 2. Classic absent father situation that honestly shows up in charts where self-reliance becomes non-negotiable early. Her mother Leona was a teacher who understood that education was the only ladder out, and she made sure Rosa understood it too. The family was poor, like genuinely struggling poor. They lived on a farm, grew their own food, made do with almost nothing. But poverty with dignity was the vibe. And here's where it gets interesting. Her grandparents were formerly enslaved. Rosa grew up hearing firsthand stories about slavery, about resistance, about survival. Her grandfather, Sylvester Edwards, was a child during the Civil War. He remembered. And he made sure Rosa remembered too. For an Aquarius Sun, this is formative. Aquarius thinks in terms of generations, systems, collective progress. She wasn't just aware of injustice as an abstract concept. She grew up in a house where the scars of slavery were living memory. Her grandfather used to sit on the porch with a shotgun when the Ku Klux Klan rode through their neighborhood at night. Rosa later said she remembered being about 6 years old, lying in bed, listening to Klan horses in the distance, watching her grandfather watch the door with his gun ready. That's the energy she was raised in. Resistance wasn't optional, it was survival. And that Earth Moon absorbed every bit of it, learning early that dignity meant being willing to protect yourself. Rosa was sickly as a child, chronic tonsillitis, recurring respiratory problems, poor health that kept her out of school constantly. Her education was spotty, interrupted, always a fight to continue, but she was determined to learn. Saturn-ruled placements don't quit. They just find another route. She attended a school run by the African Methodist Episcopal Church, then the Montgomery Industrial School for Girls. The school was staffed entirely by white women from the North who were basically considered traitors by the local community. The school was burned down twice, and they rebuilt it both times. Rosa absorbed that lesson too, that progress gets destroyed and you rebuild it anyway. She eventually made it to Alabama State Teachers College, but had to leave before graduating to care for her dying grandmother and then her sick mother. Duty first, personal dreams second. The chart doesn't complain about this. It just does what needs to be done. But she never stopped believing education mattered. That hunger to learn, to improve, to build something. It stayed with her. And then, in 1932, she meets Raymond Parks. She's 19. He's a barber who moonlighted as a civil rights organizer, because apparently one dangerous profession wasn't enough. Raymond was already deep in NAACP activism, working on the Scottsboro Boys case, trying to free 9 young black men who were falsely accused and facing execution. This was dangerous work. Meetings held in secret, names never written down, people disappearing. This could get you unalived in 1930s Alabama, and Rosa falls in love with him. Aquarius attracts fellow revolutionaries. Raymond saw something in Rosa immediately. He saw that she wasn't just pretty or nice. She had that Aquarian steel underneath, the kind of person who would understand the work, who wouldn't break under pressure. He encouraged her to finish her education, and she does. She gets her high school diploma in 1933, which only about 7% of black Americans had at the time. At 20 years old, in the Jim Crow South, she accomplished something most never could. They marry in December 1932, and this partnership becomes the foundation of everything that follows. Raymond was 10 years into his activism. He taught Rosa the ropes, how to organize, how to stay safe, how to channel anger into action. The revolutionary in her was ready to learn. The strategist in her was ready to work. By 1943, Rosa has joined the Montgomery NAACP, and she doesn't join casually she becomes the secretary. Now, secretary sounds boring until you realize she's documenting every single horror, every failed case, every name. Building receipts. This is the Earth Moon doing what it does best. Working behind the scenes, creating the foundation for something bigger. Her primary work was with voter registration. In Alabama at the time, black citizens who wanted to vote had to take a literacy test designed to be impossible. White registrars would ask questions like, how many bubbles in a bar of soap? How many jelly beans in this jar? Questions with no right answer. The correct answer was whatever number made you go home without voting. Rosa helped people prepare for these tests anyway. She documented the failures. She also investigated cases of violence against black women. This was work nobody wanted to do. Traumatizing, dangerous, and often futile because white men who assaulted black women almost never faced consequences. But Rosa took the statements. She gathered the evidence. She made sure there was a record, even when there was no justice. One case that marked her was Reese Taylor in 1944. A young black woman attacked by 6 white men who were never prosecuted. Rosa led the investigation for the NAACP. She traveled to Abbeville, Alabama, interviewed witnesses, documented everything. The men confessed. They still walked free. 2 all-white juries refused to indict. This is the work that shaped Rosa Parks. Not one dramatic moment, but years of documentation, years of watching justice fail, years of building a case for why the system had to change. The Aquarius sees the pattern, the Capricorn writes it down. For 12 years, she works with the NAACP. 12 years of patient, steady activism. She attends meetings, takes minutes, keeps records, types letters, makes phone calls. She does whatever E.D. Nixon, the head of the Montgomery NAACP, needs done. This is not glamorous work. There are no magazine covers, no speaking fees, just the grind of preparing for a moment that might never come. Most people would have burned out. Most people would have decided it wasn't worth it. But the chart doesn't know how to quit. The chart just keeps showing up. And then, in the summer of 1955, something shifts. Rosa Parks attends the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee. This is a training center for civil rights activists. They teach nonviolent resistance, organizing strategies, leadership skills. Rosa spends 2 weeks there, and she comes back transformed. She later said it was one of the few times in her life she didn't feel the constant weight of racism pressing down on her. She could just be and think and plan. Remember this, because when December 1st happens, people will try to say she was just tired, just a simple seamstress who snapped one day. But Rosa Parks had been training for this moment. The Aquarius knows the revolution is coming. The Capricorn plans exactly how to execute it. Now here's something most people don't know, and honestly it's kind of wild that this got erased from history for so long. Rosa Parks wasn't the first black woman to refuse to give up her bus seat in Montgomery that year. 9 months earlier, a 15-year-old girl named Claudette Colvin did the same thing. She was arrested, charged, and her case went to trial. Claudette was just as brave, just as principled, just as done with the indignity. So why did Rosa Parks become the face of the movement and not Claudette Colvin? Because the NAACP and civil rights leaders made a strategic decision. Claudette was young, unmarried, and later became pregnant. The movement needed someone who couldn't be attacked by the press, someone whose respectability was beyond question, someone the opposition couldn't smear. And Rosa Parks was perfect. She was 42, married, employed as a seamstress at a department store, a church-going woman with a spotless reputation. She projected exactly what they needed, moral authority that couldn't be dismissed. This wasn't luck. This was strategy. And Rosa knew her role. She agreed to become the test case. The Aquarius understood that sometimes the movement matters more than the individual. The Capricorn understood timing. December 1st, 1955. Rosa finishes her shift at Montgomery Fair department store. She's been hemming pants, adjusting sleeves, dealing with white customers who treat her like she's invisible. It's getting dark early. It's December in Alabama. She's 42 years old and she's been fighting for civil rights for over a decade, and nothing has changed enough. She's tired. Not just physically, but tired of injustice, tired of being treated as less than human, tired of a system designed to humiliate her every single day. She boards the Cleveland Avenue bus around 6 p.m. The fare is 10 cents. She drops it in the box and looks up at the driver. She recognizes him immediately. James Blake. She knows this man. 12 years earlier, he'd humiliated her on his bus. He made her exit the front door after paying and re-enter through the back, then drove off before she could get back on. Left her standing in the rain. She'd avoided his bus ever since, actively went out of her way to take different routes. But today she was tired and it was the first bus that came. Same driver. 12 years of avoiding him, and the universe puts her right back on his bus. The cosmic setup is almost too perfect. She sits in the first row of the colored section. This is legal. This is where she's allowed to sit. The bus fills up. A white man boards and has no seat. Now here's how the law actually worked. The colored section wasn't fixed. If more white people needed seats, black passengers were expected to give up theirs. The driver had absolute authority to redraw the line. This white man couldn't sit in the same row as black passengers, so even though there was one empty seat in Rosa's row, the driver needed all 4 black passengers to move so the white man could have an entire row to himself. James Blake turns around and tells Rosa and 3 other black passengers to move back. The 3 others comply. They stand up. They move. Rosa Parks stays seated. She slides toward the window. She doesn't move back. The driver asks if she's going to move. She says no. He says he'll have her arrested. She says, "You may do that. You may do that." 4 words. No screaming, no crying, no dramatic scene. Just quiet, absolute refusal. Later, people will ask if she was scared. She'll say she was tired. Not tired from working, tired of giving in. 2 police officers arrive. They ask her why she won't move. She asks them why they push black people around. They don't have an answer. They arrest her. They take her to the city jail. And Rosa Parks spends the night behind bars for the crime of sitting in a seat she was legally entitled to occupy. But here's what people don't realize. She wasn't alone in this. The movement was ready. Within hours, E.D. Nixon finds out about the arrest. He calls Clifford Durr, a white lawyer sympathetic to civil rights, who posts her $100 bail. Nixon asks Rosa if she's willing to be the test case for challenging bus segregation. She calls Raymond. Raymond is terrified. He knows what happens to black people who challenge white power in Alabama. But Rosa says yes. Meanwhile, Joanne Robinson, head of the Women's Political Council, hears about the arrest. By midnight, she and 2 students are in the Alabama State College mimeograph room printing 35,000 flyers. They work through the night, 35,000 flyers before dawn. That's main character energy with a side of sleep deprivation. Don't ride the bus to work, to town, to school, or any place Monday, December 5th. If you work, take a cab, or share a ride, or walk. The flyers spread through Montgomery's black community like fire. On Sunday, black ministers announce the boycott from their pulpits. By Monday morning, the buses are empty. The Montgomery bus boycott has begun, and it lasts 381 days. Let that sink in. Over a year of black Montgomery residents walking to work, carpooling, riding bikes, doing whatever it takes to avoid giving the bus company their money. We're talking about people walking miles in the summer heat, miles in the winter rain, domestic workers walking to clean houses, factory workers walking to their shifts, elderly people walking when their knees screamed at them to stop. The black community organized carpools with military precision. Churches donated cars. Taxi companies agreed to charge black riders the same fare as a bus ticket. People who had never met each other became a network of mutual aid. This is what Aquarian collective vision looks like in action. Not one hero. A whole community deciding together. It costs the city a fortune. The buses are practically empty. The financial pressure is immense. The city tries to fight back. They indict the organizers on bogus charges. They cancel insurance policies on carpool cars. They arrest black taxi drivers for minor violations, and still, the boycott holds. A young minister named Martin Luther King Jr. emerges as the spokesman for the boycott. He's 26 years old. The movement needed a charismatic leader who could inspire and articulate the cause. Rosa needed someone who could be the face while she did the work. The Aquarius isn't interested in personal glory. They're interested in results. Rosa pays dearly for her refusal. She loses her job at the department store. Raymond loses his job too because his employer won't tolerate his wife's activism. She receives constant death threats, phone calls in the middle of the night, letters promising violence. Her ulcers get worse from the stress. She can barely keep food down, but she doesn't stop. She doesn't recant. She doesn't say it was a mistake. Once the line is drawn, there's no going back. November 13th, 1956, the Supreme Court rules in Browder v. Gale that bus segregation is unconstitutional. And here's where the chart gets cosmic. Saturn, Rosa's chart ruler, had just stationed direct after months of retrograde. In astrology, Saturn retrograde delays results, forces patience, makes you wait. When Saturn goes direct, what you've been building finally solidifies. Rosa had been building for 12 years, and Saturn said, now. December 21st, 1956. Almost exactly 1 year after her arrest, the buses are integrated. Rosa Parks rides a desegregated bus. She sits wherever she wants. The Aquarius vision of equality has become law. The victory didn't mean safety. Rosa and Raymond's lives in Montgomery became unbearable. The threats continued. The economic retaliation continued. In 1957, they leave Alabama entirely and move to Detroit. They're essentially refugees from their own hometown, exiled for the crime of demanding dignity. And here's something that gets overlooked about Rosa Parks. She didn't stop working. In Detroit, she became a secretary for Congressman John Conyers from 1965 to 1988. 23 years, answering phones, scheduling meetings, handling constituent complaints, not giving speeches, not accepting awards, doing the administrative work that keeps movements running. Most people with her legacy would have coasted on fame. Rosa Parks spent 2 decades making sure a congressman showed up to the right votes. That's the Earth Moon. Finding satisfaction in being useful, not in being celebrated. And then there's the story most people have never heard. In 1994, a man named Joseph Skipper breaks into Rosa Parks' Detroit home. He's 28 years old, she's 81. He recognizes her, actually says her name. He knows exactly who she is, and he robs her anyway. takes $53 and assaults her, leaving her with facial injuries even in her own house, even as an elderly icon, even after everything she gave. Rosa recovered. She didn't let it destroy her, she gave a statement. She continued her life. Skipper was caught and sentenced to prison, and Rosa kept going because that's what the chart does. It keeps going. The recognition came late, the way Saturn always promises. In 1996, President Clinton awards her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. In 1999, Congress gives her the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor. Schools are named after her, statues are erected, children learn her name alongside Washington and Lincoln. In her later years, Rosa developed dementia. The woman who remembered every detail of her arrest, who could recount the boycott with precision, slowly lost her memories. She died on October 24, 2005. She was 92 years old. The response was extraordinary. Her body lay in honor at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. She was the first woman ever to receive this honor, the first Black American who wasn't a government official. Think about that. The woman who was told to give up her seat on a bus in 1955, lying in state in the seat of American power in 2005. 50 years from the back of the bus to the center of the Capitol. The cosmic irony is almost beautiful. Thousands of people waited hours in line to pay their respects. Presidents and ordinary citizens stood together to honor a woman who simply refused to move. February 4th, her birthday, is now Rosa Parks Day in California and Missouri. December 1st, the anniversary of her arrest, is Rosa Parks Day in Ohio and Oregon. She became the kind of symbol that transcends history, a name that means resistance itself. And when you understand her chart, it all makes sense. The Aquarius Sun gave her the vision, a world where your seat on a bus doesn't depend on your skin color. A society that lives up to its promises of equality. That's pure Aquarian idealism, backed by the stubbornness of fixed air that refuses to accept anything less. The Saturn-ruled moon and rising gave her the patience to wait for the right moment and the discipline to execute when that moment came. It gave her the emotional armor to withstand years of threats without breaking. It made her willing to do the unglamorous work decade after decade because she understood that change happens slowly and someone has to show up for the boring parts. But here's what really gets me about Rosa Parks' chart, the combination of air and earth. Aquarius is an air sign, intellectual, conceptual, focused on ideas and systems. Capricorn is earth, practical, material, focused on tangible results. So many revolutionaries are all vision and no execution. They can imagine a better world, but they can't build it. So many organizers are all execution and no vision. Rosa Parks had both. She could see the future she wanted, and she could do the practical work to create it. She understood that revolution isn't just about the dramatic moment. It's about the 381 days after the moment. It's about showing up when no one's watching. It's about the unsexy grind of social change. The last thing I want to say about Rosa Parks is this. Her chart wasn't loud. She didn't have fire sign placements that demanded attention. She didn't have dramatic aspects that created chaos and upheaval. She had air and earth, vision and work, principles and patience, and that quiet chart changed America. She didn't shout. She didn't make a scene. She simply refused to accept what she knew was wrong. And she sat there, completely still, while history rearranged itself around her. That's the power of an Aquarius who knows their worth. That's what happens when Saturn-ruled placements decide enough is enough. Rosa Parks' chart wasn't loud, but it was unyielding. And that is what changed the world.